Andrea, I must thank you very much for doing this, because we tried to do this, I don't know, a month or so ago, and, the microphones were all messed up, and you were so kind and patient. So thank you for coming back and doing this.
And thank you for being kind and patient as I worked my way through the first snowstorm of Utah.
Yeah.
Because I woke up and I was like, what is going on? Where's the mountains?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like October 14th, and we're having a nice snowstorm. So it's a little early, but not too atypical for Utah.
Right. And then this weekend it'll be like 66. So I'll just ride the wave. I'm becoming quite acclimated to the Utah weather, and I'm embracing it as well. So today I'm in my winter boots, and then I'll be ready to rock this weekend.
Exactly. I put on my hoodie. I'm feeling nice and comfortable and cozy, and then tomorrow I'll have to wear my short sleeve shirt. So it's kind of Utah for you, right?
The balance.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, though.
Yeah, of course. So I follow you on social media, Instagram.
Follow you on social media and Instagram.
Not that I'm terribly active. I check in every once in a while and see what people are doing.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did notice for you, it's probably not that recently, but in the last month or so, was an article about you being one of, or the only, is it the only female sports reporter in Utah?
Yeah, that's me, the only on cam. So there are women who do writing for the local papers, but if we're talking the television stations from Channel 4, Channel 5, 2, and Fox 13, I'm the only woman in sports on camera doing the job.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
There's this certain level of that's freaking awesome, but then there's this other level of why aren't there more women doing this, right? So
totally.
Tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So when I was coming here, I started my television career in Pocatello, Idaho, which is essentially this started from the bottom, now we're here situation. Right. And I moved out to Pocatello from Michigan State right out of college, and just was like, give me the opportunity to be on television, you know, and they did. And when I got the call from Salt Lake City, they were like, there's actually no other women in this city doing it, and we want you to be that person, that token female, essentially. And they were like, are you ready to essentially embrace that, because you might deal with doubt or just a couple things, because here's the thing, I'm not LDS, I'm not from here. I'm, a female, I'm young. Mm-hmm. You add all those things together, and I get discredited sometimes, because I essentially had to prove myself to the market before anyone was like, we are behind her. It took, well, who are you? Where are you from? Why are you here?
Right.
And in situations, that's the girl, and it's a good thing, because if you don't know my name, I'm the girl.
You're right.
If you see me at the games and you don't know who that's Andrea Urban, well, that's the girl with Fox 13. So good situations like that, and then other situations where again, people have doubted me, or I've gotten remarks like, well, she doesn't know what she's talking about because she's a girl, well, she's never played football. And it's just and it's mind-boggling sometimes, but that's what we're working towards, and I think Utah is maybe just a step or two behind other bigger cities. And I'm honored to be the one essentially paving the way. Yeah. If we want to say paving. But,
I like it, because, we don't know each other to a certain depth or anything, but what I know of you is that you are the type of personality that can pave that for Utah. You get out there, people criticizing you because, of all the aspects that you just mentioned. But I think your personality is perfect for it, because you probably just take it and run with it, and maybe laugh about it a little bit, and are probably not afraid to maybe put it back in somebody's face. Maybe that's not the best term, but push back against it too.
Well, I'm the type of person who's well, you don't think I know what I'm doing? Watch me. Right. And watch me, make a mark. Watch me ask a question that makes all of you kind of go, oh, never thought of that. And that's and I also I just have a true passion for the people. I think a lot of sports reporters just see X's and O's and wins and losses. And that's another thing, is I pride myself on the human behind the helmet. The guy who worked his way to be the starting quarterback, at a major university, how did he do that? Right. He's not just, how many yards, how many touchdowns. And recently, the University of Utah had the passing of Aaron Lowe. Tragic and
very sad.
Less than a year after Ty Jordan's passing. So head coach Kyle Whittingham is obviously struggling with this, but Kyle Whittingham is the kind of person who is hard-nosed and would never show that. And we're at our press conference, a room full of men and Andrea, and they're asking, well, how are these emotions going to affect, the game against USC? And what are you guys doing to prepare? And are you guys back at practice? And yada, yada, yada. And I was the only one in the whole room to say, Kyle, how are you?
Yeah.
And the whole room got quiet.
Yeah.
And he went, yeah. And he ended up giving this just most thoughtful answer that he had said in the entire press conference, basically saying this is the hardest year of his entire coaching career.
Right.
And he's struggling.
Yeah.
And before I could even leave the press conference, someone had already snagged my question and put it on Twitter, and it blew up.
Yeah.
Because in the Pac-12 network got a hold of it, and they said sometimes it's as simple as how are you? Thank you, Andrea, for doing this. And you know what? It was just me being me and feeling the moment and knowing that for once it's not about football.
I love that.
And I think those are the moments, and this goes back to the female thing, that having that woman's intuition and being a part of a man's field makes a difference.
Yeah. We need it. We need it, on multiple levels, and especially in sports. Like you said, men get caught up in their egos and get caught up in this sports. This is for men sort of ideology.
Are you going to win the game?
Right, which is stupid at a lot of levels. So I'm really glad and happy to hear that you're making those inroads with these sort of questions, personality, women's intuition, all of that. Part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast was to explore sort of the mental, emotional health of different avenues of life.
Yeah.
And I know that they're present in sports and reporting.
Yeah.
They don't show it very much, but I'm just you sharing that experience right now I love it.
Yeah. And I really do. And that's, again, it goes back to finding the human behind the game, and everyone's Utes have a bad starting season, and everyone's like, fire Kyle Whittingham,
right?
And I'm like, can we just stop for a second here?
Sure.
And the guy has been so successful with this team, he's rebuilding, yada yada, and that's just what I try to focus on. So
I love that. This reminds me of a show I've been watching, Ted Lasso. Have you watched Ted Lasso at all?
I actually haven't watched it yet, but you know how many people have told me to watch it?
Right.
I have to. Is it on Apple or HBO or
Apple? Okay,
that's where I struggle, is I don't have Apple.
Yeah, I ultimately had to get somebody else's login to do it,
Well, and that's what I'm leaning toward. We're gonna.
I mean, I didn't do that. No, it's my own login. Yeah.
What do you mean? My Netflix isn't my friend of a cousin?
Yeah, exactly. But it's very Ted Lasso's. I was resistant to watch it at first. I'm not a big Jason Sudeikis fan.
Okay.
But I was like, I'll give it a go because I play soccer. I love soccer. So that was the first thing that people say is you love it because soccer. But there's a lot of this sports psychology, a lot of Ted Lasso looking at the individual rather than the game. Ted Lasso doesn't know the game, so he's focusing more on the individual. How can I connect with the individual? So
wow.
It was really cool.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so I will for sure watch it. I've heard nothing but great things. But I'm also in the thick of football season, and sometimes when I have a free moment, I just want to sleep.
Of course, it makes complete sense.
And I find myself just taking random 10-minute naps just throughout the day, and then I'm like, oh, okay, gotta go to the Jazz game because now basketball season's starting, and I can't even switch gears right now because I'm so into football season. So, I do like to say I have one of the best jobs, but sometimes I'm just I can't be in two places at once, people.
Yeah.
So
before we started recording, you were just telling me about, late kickoff and getting home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
But it sounds like ultimate excitement to you, at the game, feeling the vibe of coaches, the players, the
sidelines.
fans. Yeah. A little bit of both worlds.
I know. There's people that will probably never be on the sideline of a football game.
Yeah.
Even if it's just pre-kickoff where they let fans down there sometimes to take pictures, then they bring them back. I'm in and out of the sideline like all the time. Yeah. And it's just kind of like, I say like sidelines and sneakers because I love shoes and I love being on the sideline. And those are two things that are just like a part of my life. And I kind of like have, deemed them my thing. And sometimes I'm sit here and it's just like, wow, I get to be on the sideline of all these games. Even when I'm tired, don't take it for granted.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. My only sideline experience was I went over to England to watch a bunch of soccer games.
Okay, sweet.
So I went to, there's the highest league, the Premier League, and then the one just lower called the Championship. I went to a Championship game because I just wanted to see what the lower league was like, and luckily they're a little bit more lenient when you get there early, and the guy knew that I wasn't from there or whatever, and I asked if I could come out and like take a picture on the pitch, and he's like, yeah, absolutely, come. And I just like, it wasn't during the game, it wasn't a big moment, but still just being on that sideline, I was like, this is freaking cool.
Yeah,
I love
it
that.
is. It's a weird energy. You also hear a lot of things when you're out there. You're like,
I would love to hear.
Did he just wait? He goes to BYU. What's going on? And it's just because when you're in game mode, man, there's nothing like it. And that's the funny thing is like they're like, oh, do you think that like the players see you? And I'm like, no, there's a reason why they run into photographers and media members on the sideline when they're trying to catch a ball or something, because they are full speed focused game mode, like that. When they run into someone, they're like, oh man, I'm so sorry, like mistakes and things like that happen because it's their world and we're just around it. And I love it. So
yeah, for sure. I've always thought that the NBA should release an uncensored like trash talk of like games and stuff. Of course, they never would, but I think it would be so entertaining. Yeah,
too much of like a political thing. It would just be like, oh no, now everyone's in trouble. We heard what you said. Because like I said, I've heard a lot of things for football more specifically because I am extremely close with basketball, but I think in football, they don't think you can hear them as well. And then you hear it and you're like, oh, I see what you did there.
And I'm sure the NBA players are coached heavily these days about like, don't say these things.
And that's why you see Joe Ingles like lean in to players and say things.
Cover his mouth a little bit so nobody can lip read what he's saying.
And then really and that's what he's known for, is getting in people's heads. And it's like, well, we can see that it's happening, but we don't really know what's happening. So
I want to rewind a little bit. When you first were talking about coming here and facing everything that you were asked to face, you did mention not being LDS and not being a part of the majority religion. What has that been like?
Mostly just people asking me if I'm going to get married. That's really it, because the thing is I really do try to represent myself very well, and I think that's a lot of what the LDS community is like, is just living that structured, represented life. And even though I do go out and I do all those things that maybe they're not supposed to do, I overall represent myself in a way that gets along with the church. And so I've had things asked to me mostly in Pocatello, because Pocatello was small and a very LDS, and at least Salt Lake City is a city to where they know that there's going to be other people here. But in Pocatello, it's like, well, you're not one of us, And so I'd be in the grocery store, and I've had people ask me, what church do I go to? Hey, you're at my son's game. What church do you go to? Or what ward are you in? That was different in Pocatello because small town, girl, placed in the middle of it all. Now, coming to Salt Lake, it was more like, oh, are you or are you not? Okay, cool. And then, are you married? Or are you going to get married? Because, and sometimes it's crazy because it does make you feel that way, because I'll go down to like, BYU, and I actually love BYU's football team. I love their basketball team, their coaches, and their media like relations people. I have so much fun with BYU. I just, don't experience the honor code like a student would in any of that situation. So I can't speak on like the education side of the school, but I have a good time at BYU. And it's just funny when I interview like a freshman who's like 19, and in the interview he'll be like, yeah, my wife like really inspires me to like be a better basketball player. And I'm like, what?
You're married? Wow,
yeah. So that's where sometimes I'm like, okay, you're not in Michigan anymore, which is where I went to college, or you're not in Illinois anymore, which is where I grew up, because my friends are, 30 and whatever, and not married yet, but it's just here. That's what I'm learning is the way of doing it. So that's kind of been my really, at least Utah wise, has been, well, if you're 27, Andrea, you should be married by now.
Right.
And I just laugh.
Yeah. That is kind of a really strange thing that would be one of the first things they want to know about you.
Yeah.
But I
what's your husband do?
I'm guessing at a certain level, these young men that have big egos, they're probably sometimes asking for a personal reason, wanting to know if Andrea's single or not.
Yes, totally, and and that's the other thing too is I've experienced that. So when I was single, I have an awesome boyfriend now, but when I was single, I'd go on dates with a lot of guys that claimed themselves as ex-Mormons or whatever. And then it would be interesting because I'd be like out with them and they'd have a beer, but they'd almost have a beer like in spite of like they'd be like, yeah, I'll get a beer. And I'm like, what? Like, I'll get a beer too? Like, why are we making this a thing?
Right.
And then that was always interesting. And then I've gone on dates where men are very into the fact that I'm on television, and they're like, "Yeah, I TiVo'd, I DVR'd you, I recorded you, I watched your recording, and I want support. I want you to watch me, but when I'm going on 2 dates with you." And you're recording it, and you're listening to me on the radio in the morning, and you're texting me about the radio. Whoa. And then again, now polar opposite, I've had guys who are insecure about the fact that, I work with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and interview these guys. How could you interview them and still want me? So I went through this wild dating ride here until I met a non-LDS, confident in himself guy that was like, yeah, go kick ass and I'll be here waiting. And that's what I need is support, but also space at the same time.
For sure.
Because if you're too into it, or if you're not into it at all, it's just not gonna work. So that goes off of the "are you married or not" situation. I was like, well, I'm staying as far away from it right now because I'm experiencing too many polar opposites, and I just need to like breathe.
Right. I'm curious because I think you kind of mentioned this before. Utah seems to be a little bit behind in terms of progressing in certain areas. It seems like Utah is discussing more and more, of course, female leadership.
Yes. Females
being in these different positions where you haven't traditionally seen them in the past. And you building your career that way. Was this a thing growing up in Chicago and Michigan as well, or is it more so a thing here in Utah?
Yeah, I think it's more of a thing here.
Okay.
I do think that women, just like we know, lesser pay or less opportunity for leadership roles. I think that is a thing everywhere, but. I have reached out, you're always looking for the next best thing. And I've talked to other TV stations in other cities, and I always kind of hit them with I'm the only female sports reporter in Salt Lake. And they go, it doesn't surprise me. It's a very conservative market. We actually have 5 females in sports. And I'm like, oh, and they're like, yeah, every station here has females. And this is other cities, seriously, across the nation I've talked to.
Yeah.
Because you never know what's next, and you got to just network and meet these people. And I always try to use the only female thing as kind of like a cool, and then they hit me with, oh, well, we've got like 6 of them. So it's, I do think that it's a growth and a working through thing in Utah.
So, that other station you talked to mentioned it just being like a conservative place. Do you think it is down to being conservative, or what other factors go into Utah being behind a little bit from your perspective?
I think the state is run by the church, and we like things how they are here.
Right. Yeah.
Too much new pisses people off. If you're from here, if you've been here for a long time, you almost like the fact that it's Small Lake City.
Right.
But Small Lake City is on its way to truly becoming Salt Lake City, with all these new apartments being built downtown, with all the new things to do. It's really becoming Denver. But less expensive and easier to access mountains and hikes.
Right.
Because you have to drive at least an hour if you're in Denver. But Denver's growth has happened over the years. And my friend who lives there, and she does avalanche hockey sports for them. And she's like, dude, there's going out, there's mountains, there's hiking. It's growing. And I think that that's what Salt Lake City is on the path to doing. But I don't think OG locals, original locals who are a part of it, maybe even in the LDS or not in the LDS community, are almost like, oh, what's happening to our Salt Lake City?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm seeing is maybe why, as a whole, it's behind, is because the people in it don't necessarily love the growth. But I think the growth is going to happen whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
Because people are catching on to this place, and I do think it's Post Malone's fault.
It really does have a.
I'm telling you, you know how many people ask me, have you seen Post Malone? Do you know Post Malone? I heard Austin Post lives there. And it's like, wow. And then he puts, Utah snow in his lyrics. And now everyone's like, well, what's Utah snow like? And it's like,
Is he actually talking about the snow, or is he talking about
so seriously, it's pretty crazy that, and I'm finding out a bunch of other celebrities live here too. And I think it's just becoming a place where you get the best of both worlds, but you also get your privacy.
Yeah.
And it's growing. And I think what I'm saying about females and stuff in the industry and in sports, it's all going to change.
Yeah.
Soon.
Yeah.
I'm just a part of the growth.
Yeah. Which, like I said earlier, I love to see it, and I love, these different facets that you're bringing to sports reporting in Utah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy sometimes. I'm like, what am I doing?
you get a little bit of that imposter syndrome,
no, because I have passion and I care about what I'm doing. I think sometimes when I do something and it essentially blows up, or people acknowledge it and go, wow, this is awesome, that's where I'm like, wait, really? Because I was just doing it.
Right.
That it's more like I surprise myself by just doing things.
Right.
That people gravitate towards, and I people message me and say, hey, I just want to let you know, you're really doing a good job and you're really making a mark, and I'm over here I need to be doing more. I need to be saying more. I need to be in more places. And people are messaging me going, oh, it's not everyone sees the work that you're doing. And then that's when I have to take a step back and go, what? Really? So right. I mean, I guess it's a good thing that I'm always pushing myself for more, but maybe sometimes I need to just take a step back and realize dude, you're doing just fine.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
I think that's a great message for all of us to hear and to do in our own lives, right? I think sometimes we do feel like we need to do more. Sometimes less is more, right? Sometimes it's just finding that nice spot for us to be in and having an influence and not trying to do too much, but trying to do enough. It's a hard balance. You know, it's different for each person. And I'm sure, like you said, you're early in your career and wanting to push yourself. So you're trying to find those other avenues, opportunities as well. Yeah.
But at some point, it's and not at some point, I'm always going to look for what's next. I think as soon as you get comfortable is when you screw yourself over. You want to always be uncomfortable and trying new things. And that's why I've moved to Pocatello. And that's why I moved to Salt Lake City, was because these aren't places I'm from. These aren't places I know. But because I'm uncomfortable here, I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's why when, I just do my job and people are like, oh, you're doing a good job. It's like, well, I need something else.
Yeah.
It fuels me almost. So yeah, it's just, it's one of those things where don't allow yourself to get comfortable and embrace what you're doing, but not too comfortable to where you give up on what's next.
Yeah. I really like that.
Which is just a crazy balance. Easier said than done.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very hard to actually do, and it sounds incredible, just, the words, but doing it.
Yeah, it's let me inspire you, but it's also really hard to do.
Yeah. Have you had to take on a role of speaking for women in these professional, outward-facing roles, speaking for young women and getting them into these opportunities?
Yeah, you know how many times I've had college students at the University of Utah who are journalism major shadow me or just ask to talk to me, or I've spoken to classrooms over Zoom all across the nation. I talked to Texas Tech during COVID, like, because they see what I'm doing and they're like, okay, so it's possible. And I think the perfect example is young, not from here, female, doing it in a city of all those things against her. It's almost like, well, how'd you do it?
Yeah.
And I have questions for other women on other sidelines where I'm like, how'd you do it? How'd you get there? And it's just funny when they come to me, I'm always sometimes like, wow, well, I'm still trying to figure it out too.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it. And that's my advice to journalism students right out of college or even in college. No opportunity is too, like, how do I word this? Like, you're never too good for an opportunity. So if it's just, doing play-by-play for the high school football game down the street, you're not bigger than that.
Yeah.
Go and do it.
Right.
Because you don't know who you're going to meet. Getting coffee for the voices of, BYU TV. Right. You're not too big for that. Go get the coffee, because by you being there, you're meeting people. Right. And I used to take every opportunity. I've covered, obviously the big ones, football, basketball, and all those things, but I've also covered like fly fishing. And I've also covered archery. And I've done these things, and I've done special needs sports too, because there's a niche, and I've done a lot of women's sports because they obviously get the short end of the stick too, but there's a fan base for each one of those things. And if you put yourself there, they're the kind of fan base who embraces you versus how many of us are trying to do football and basketball. Right. Yeah. So you sometimes get pushed back in the shadows. So I tell people, if there's an opportunity, a girl I was helping, she got an internship with the minor league baseball team in some other state, and I was like, go. Yeah. Go, because minors, next up is majors. Go. So I struggled to put that into words at first, but it's just like take any opportunity that's in front of you, and don't ever be like, well, I'm just gonna wait till the Jazz call me. Yeah. Yeah. Because the only way the Jazz are gonna call you is if you're at the high school basketball games grinding. Right.
I think that's advice that can be, in all of our lives in different aspects, right? Like, take the opportunities you have. Yep. Don't sit back and watch these opportunities go. Just get out there and take advantage of them.
And do it. And that's the thing, is a lot of people want but aren't willing to do. I think that just comes with also the social media world and seeing everybody have the car that they want or the shoes that they want, and don't realize, or the job that they want, and you don't realize they most likely, unless you're someone who just popped off on social media, most likely those people who have all the things that they want did the work to get to that point. Yeah. And again, with the Gen Z generation, it's like, well, I want to be famous and I want to be a YouTube star. And it's like, well, start making videos every single week, because they're bound to grow. I always say, if you do something once every day for a year straight, there's no way that in a year you won't be better at that one thing.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's like, it doesn't happen overnight. Every single day, even if it's just sending out a resume, okay, that's 1% better. Every day, just do something that can help you towards what you want to be. Basketball, get in there and shoot some free throws. Okay, today I don't want to run. We'll take a break. There's no way you won't be better in a year. Yeah.
I'm curious, where did this drive and confidence come for you?
I was talking to a group of high school students or college students, and one of the guys was like, so have you always been this driven? It's a little overwhelming. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, because it's just the truth. I'm overwhelming.
No, I wouldn't put it in overwhelming, but it's here and it's present, and I love it. And so I'm naturally me wants to explore where did you get it?
I guess I do have really two awesome supportive parents who've been married for 35 years, and I also have a brother who's my best friend. So I do think it stems from family life. But ever since I was a kid, I was singing in my room. I was a dancer. I wanted to act, and then so I'm really tall. I'm 6'1", fun fact. And I've always been really tall. So then at one point in my career of, I want to be famous, I want to be an actress, I was too tall to play a child's role, and I looked too young to play an adult role. And I never got casted for anything when I was a kid because my height. And I was like, well, I want to do this and I want to be on TV and I had that passion for performance, actually. And so I think the work ethic comes from my family, my dad giving us an awesome life, but the push for greatness in such a hard industry comes from, I love making a difference, and I love saying things that people want to listen to. In 8th grade, this is no joke, in 8th grade, I was voted by my class to give the speech for the end of the year, promoting into high school. It was called 8th grade promotion, not graduation. We called it promotion, whatever. And I was thrilled. And I'm up on this stage and I'm cracking jokes because our 8th grade class was really close to each other, and we all had the same teachers, and I would do jokes from that certain teacher, and watching the people's faces in 8th grade in the crowd react to what I was saying fed me. And I was like, okay, so I can do something where people actually want to listen to me. Right. But I don't want it to be politics. So how do I do this? Right. And then, so I get to college and I'm like, I go and see him. Actually, my counselor was awesome. He was this awesome guy with dreadlocks, just super cool. And he's like, we should put you in journalism and see how you do. Well, basically, full send. The rest is history, because I realized I could tell stories. And I'm always that friend with my friend group where they're like, you just tell the story. And that's been my way that whole life. Right. So why not tell stories for a living? Right. So I almost just like grew into it in life. I wanted to be a dancer. I wasn't controlled enough. I wanted to be an actress. I was too tall. I wanted to be a singer. I got this deep voice once I grew up. Can't sing like that. So all of these things weren't working, and I was like, wait a second. So I can talk for a living about sports and be myself and not have to act as somebody else. I can do this. And it kind of just fell into it. And then an internship or a job shadow for a class led to an internship, which led to a part-time job at a local TV station in Michigan. And from that brought me to Idaho to here. And it was one of those things where I was like, I don't think I can give up on this because it's working. Yeah. And that's why now I'm pushing for more and more. So if anything, and again, I think I overwhelmed the college kids because they're like, well, I just want to get a job. But I'm like, I want to get a job, but what else can I do? Yeah. And yeah, I think it just stems originally from my family and the life that they gave us. There was never a moment in my life where I didn't think I could do something or have something, and it wasn't like a spoiled situation. It was just like, because we worked for it. Yeah. And yeah, and then my careers and all my TVs and dancing and acting just didn't work out. So I was able to almost find another way.
But it sounds like, based on 8th grade promotion, that maybe stand-up comedy in the future, you know.
Oh God, I don't know if I'm
work
funny
on
enough.
Some material. I'm sure you'll have plenty of material dealing with athletes after all these years.
Well,
right?
and I've actually considered getting up at open mic at Wise Guys downtown, but I don't think I'm actually, like, I don't know if I have like a punchline. Like, I don't know if I'm funny like that, but I can tell stories. Yeah. So I do almost treat my, like when I'm anchoring the shows, as like a little performance. Yeah. And if I can get you while watching the show to go, yeah, that's all I want. And I'll do things like that. So like, I'll say things like, well, not in my opinion, like, and I'll be like, yeah, and the Jazz win, but, and they're doing really well lately, but not on the third 3-point line. And I'll like kind of try to make remarks, and people appreciate it. People appreciate it more than just, Jazz win, Jazz lose, back to you. Right. And I really do try to throw my personality into it. And I think that's, 8th grade promotion, man. I'm telling you, in that moment, watching adults, parents, laugh along with me, or just even smile, and be looking at me, I was like, oh, shit, I can do this.
And I'm sure from this internal emotional perspective, you feel that internally as well, right? You feel like these, for lack of a better word, good vibes coming your way. That good vibes promotes confidence, promotes you to want to take a little bit more risk, tell that joke that you weren't sure about, or be able to go talk to that athlete that you were a little nervous about. It builds over time, right?
And the nervousness is totally there. But when you almost get past it and you see the reaction, it's like, okay, I can do this. But then also in the adult world, there's haters. Yeah. So you're not always going to have the smiles. You're not always going to have the laughs. You're going to have the haters. And but that's, again, when I go, LOL, you've got your own issues. Like Like, oh my God, really? Like my broadcast upset you that much? Oh, I'm so sorry that you're going through something. And that's how I try to approach it. Yeah, unless they like really come at me personally and they're like, here's what's wrong about you. But usually it's just like, well, you mispronounced this wrong and how dare you? And it's like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Or they don't like my outfit. Your outfit is this and that. No, I'm so sorry that your life is. Yeah. That's how I.
Well, I like that you also were just willing to say that you still get nervous, right? You're still sometimes nervous about going out and doing all this sort of stuff, and you deal with those nerves all the time. And part of that is haters, and then they're always going to be there, right?
Criticized, because there's always someone who thinks they can do a better job than you do,
right?
But they're not the ones with the job.
Yeah.
And people often say to me, "Hey, you have the best job. I wish I had it. How'd you get that job?" They have no idea the grind it takes and the effort it takes, and also putting yourself out there. Sometimes you ask a question, and the player's going to go, "Wait, what? What did you mean?"
Right.
And that's always kind of like, this is what I meant, and does that make sense? And it's a lot. You're putting yourself out there for criticism, to know your shit, and to also represent yourself well. And I kind of live for that. I'm kind of like, again, just watch me.
Are you taught in journalism school, or as you go through training at a station or anything? Are you taught to only ask specific questions that elicit response? Because it seems like a lot of the reporters that I've observed, and maybe this trend is changing, they're asking questions that just get this sort of like, oh, well, we weren't very good on defense today, rather than like an open-ended question and be like you asked Kyle, like,
how are you?
How are you doing?
Yeah, and obviously we say how are you when we see each other in passing, but this was a totally different situation, directed completely at him. I don't know. So basically you're saying, do I have to ask open-ended questions? They don't teach us that. They just say, find the story.
Okay.
And if the story is the defense, then, okay, what went wrong on defense today? Maybe he breaks it down, and then maybe he says, Clark was the one to pull through, which is one of the defensive ends for Utah. That's when I go, oh, well, what was it about Clark? And then he starts talking about Clark. Then my brain goes, okay, next week during media availability, I'm going to request Clark, and I'm going to talk to him, and then I'll say, hey, Clark, your coach said that you were the one that held the defense down. How does it make you feel? So it's about finding the story, less about how to word the question.
Okay.
Because once you know what story you want to tell, and some people's story is, I want to make these guys look bad. And some people's story is, I'm a fan of Utah, and I want to give them all the credit in the world. I'm just giving Utah as an example because I'm just working with Utah football. But like, same with BYU. It's like, well, I'm actually kind of a fan, so I'm going to make sure they sound good. I always try to, because I'm also not from here, I think it gives me a different perspective. And I look at it like, okay, let me listen to the first couple of questions that the beat writers need to get, because the beat writers have a specific story that they're looking for. And then once I kind of listen to the answers, that's when I chime in and go, okay, well, what about this guy, on this position in this moment? Like, seriously, if you can sometimes go to a moment in a game and describe it, hey, in the third quarter, on first down, you guys did this. He'd go, oh, yeah, actually, in that moment, we called the wrong play, but it worked out. And then you get a story. So yeah, just I don't think it's about what can my question be? I guess it is, but it's more just about what did I see out there and what's going to be a story. And sometimes when you ask a question, they'll give you an answer where you're kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Cool. Like, and it just works out. So, yeah.
Have you explored much asking questions that are maybe a little bit outside of that game that day, a little bit more just personal directly to Joe Ingles or to Donovan or any of the Utah football guys or anything like that?
Yeah, those are mostly during the week. So post-game interviews are game.
Okay.
Because they just put their hearts out on the line.
Sure.
So let's talk about it. But come Monday, which is when we see them again after they win or lose on Saturday, and same with Jazz, we get to see them throughout the week on like a Tuesday or something before a game on a Thursday, because basketball plays kind of whenever they want. that's when you do those feature pieces. And that's when, like I said, I grab Clark and I say, hey, over the weekend you had this great game and coach said this, and you do the personal stuff. But post game is strictly game time.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's also something that, that you need to think about too, is just how can you differentiate yourself? And that's how I differentiate myself, is during the week, I'm not asking you the X's and O's.
Yeah.
I'm asking you, one of my favorite questions is what makes you the player that you are. Because it's funny because each one of them takes it differently, because sometimes they're too humble to be like, well, this is why.
Right.
But a lot of them are like, actually my family, because this happened.
Yeah.
And I just allow them to talk.
Yeah.
And I kind of leave it open-ended, like, what makes you you?
Yeah.
And they're like, huh? And I'm like, what makes you you?
Yeah.
Well, let me see. And then it just turns into something. So simple and open-ended is obviously the key here. But also just don't forget your environment. If it's post-game, focus on the game. But if it's just, when you get to talk to them, do that feature piece.
Yeah, I like that. And those types of questions are pretty introspective. So I think probably a lot of... this is a bit of a generalization, but a lot of male athletes probably don't take a lot of time to do introspection. They probably I got here because I go to the gym every day and I lift weights and I train hard. And that's like their only answer. And obviously there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah, why do you play the game? Why do you play the game? And they go, wow. I've had a couple of interviews ended recently with a couple players, and they go, that was a dope interview. Or they go, that was one of the coolest interviews I've ever done. And I walk away like, ooh, baby. Like, I am just like, that is one of the best compliments you can give me. Like, I don't care if you like my outfit. I don't care if you like my face. I mean, seriously, when you say to me, that was a special interview, and coming from, a sophomore in college telling me it's a dope interview, I'm like, that's the best compliment I could ever get.
For sure.
So...
let me ask a naive journalism question. So you talked about beat writers versus kind of what you do.
TV broadcast.
Yeah, TV broadcast. Help me understand the difference and kind of why beat writers might go after a certain angle versus what you might do.
So beat writers are very specific. They have an article to write, word for word, stat for stat, detail for detail.
Okay.
TV is almost looking for emotion because we're visual.
Yeah.
Beat writers are not. So they want to know, hey, what happened, in this quarter, and why were your sacks up? Why was your offensive line not working in this quarter? And then they do a whole story on the offensive line. In TV broadcast, I only have so many minutes on television to give you the sports report. I really just want, how do you feel about this? What did you see out there? What could get better? Give me that more generalized stuff. And then during the week, if we want to do a feature piece on the offensive line, sure. But mostly we have to think we have usually 3 minutes to do sports broadcast on TV. What are the key points? How did it make you feel? Because feeling on TV is more better to look at.
Right.
Than, the guys did this, the guys did that, and this is how many touchdowns we scored. You want feeling. I always ask, how proud are you of these guys? Or are you proud of the guys? And it gives a good answer, and that's a TV question. Versus like a beat writer question is going to be specific about a stat or a position.
So maybe more data-driven and just stat-driven versus this quality, emotional story side of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Visual over just reading. It's just different.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks for helping me understand those ins and outs of journalism.
It's things you don't think about. And it's beat writers sometimes, because I'm friends with, they'll give me crap because they're like, oh, Andrew, you always ask the feel-good questions. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm looking for.
Yes, that's my job.
Yeah, so what do you mean? I don't want to know about, the number of times, you ran the ball. I mean, I guess I do. If it's successful, I'll talk about it. Hey, you ran for over 200 yards. But that doesn't drive my broadcast.
How much did you playing sports help you or lead to you wanting to be in the sports world?
A little bit. So my connection to the sports world comes from me playing sports, but me wanting to be a sports reporter comes from me not wanting to talk about deaths and not wanting to talk about laws and not wanting to talk about, like, you know how people don't even turn on the news anymore because news is so upsetting. Like, and not just from politics, but just anything.
Yeah.
Guy was murdered. Okay. Oh, there's a pothole issue on this street. Let's write a law about it. Like, or let's sign a petition or whatever.
Yeah.
That stuff like brings me down. So when I was 19, sophomore in college, our journalism teacher said, you need to job shadow someone. And I job shadowed one of the evening anchors in Lansing, Michigan. And she's like, yeah, so here's our top stories today. There was a homicide. There was a car accident. And I was like, what? And I was a volleyball player. Yes, I did play a little bit at Michigan State, and I played all my life. I was a volleyball player, and I was always good speaking to the media. And so I do know how to treat athletes when it comes to wins and losses because I know the emotion that goes behind the game.
Right.
But one of the main reasons I wanted to do sports was because I wanted to have fun going to work every day. And knowing that news reporters sometimes have to go stand in the snow and sometimes get to go, be at an awesome event and maybe interview someone famous, or maybe you're at just like a rally and people are screaming and fighting like that crazy rally or crazy, just a mess that happened in Salt Lake City in 2020 about everything. Our news team was down there.
Right.
And I was going to a basketball game. So I just chose my journey for myself because I wanted to love going into work every day, and I think sports is so much fun. And yeah, there's drama behind sports and there's social issues now within sports, and we can address that. But overall, people turn to sports to almost get away from life. Yeah. The reality. I'm gonna sit and watch the game, and for how many hours I'm invested in this game, and that's why I love doing sports, and that's why I chose sports.
I really like that. And it seems like sports overall, and I've heard other journalists say this, that sports are kind of like a microcosm of the bigger community, the bigger world around us. Those same sort of storylines, those same sort of drama that goes into it, same sort of politics that go into it. They're kind of like a microcosm for what's really going on in the community.
Yes, absolutely. It brings so many people together, and that was the other thing about 2020, like empty arenas, empty stadiums. I was at those games of empty Rice-Eccles Stadium, empty Lavelle Edwards Stadium, and I'm there because I'm the one of a handful of people that get to still go to the games and be masked up and everything. And we shot video from the stands when normally we would shoot video from the sideline, but there was nobody in the stands, so we were in the stands. One of the most eerie experiences ever was the fake crowd noise at these empty games. Yeah. And I was like, what this tells me beyond, just filling up the stands is sports brings people together. And there's no sense of togetherness right now. And even though they're still playing, I can't be here and high five the guy next to me when my team scores the touchdown. Right. And that is missing. So that just tells you about sports right there is even if you and I don't get along on like how we see life or whatever, if you and I both like the Utah Jazz, we have something to talk about. Yeah. If you and I both just like the game of football, we can talk about the NFL and, talk shit and say, this team sucks, this team's good. And that can give us something to connect about. Yeah. And that's why I love sports is because no matter what, unless you are just completely hate sports, and like I get that, and some people are like, screw it, I don't care. Overall, you can talk about it with anyone.
So true. I watch a lot of sports, and I watched during the pandemic with no crowds, and to a certain level, it was almost unwatchable just because
I know.
Like I love the tactics of sports and like how coaches go about preparing their team for the opponent and watching that, but you can only watch that so much. Yep. Like not having the emotion of fans going crazy after a goal or a touchdown, and not the football players jumping into the crowd for the celebration or the soccer guys sliding in the corner for their celebration. Like you saw that change during no crowds. Like it's almost like it took the feeling out of it.
Took the feeling out of it for us, took the feeling out of it for the players.
Yeah.
You think these guys want to play for an empty stadium? I think the whole part of the game too is the swagger.
Yeah.
Is the fit, the sense of we're celebrating in the end zone and people are going crazy for us.
Yeah.
And now we're just playing a pickup game of football with nobody here in an empty stadium. Like, and basketball too, which basketball is actually even weirder because there's a roof on it. So at least like when it was an empty stadium, that you're outside, so there is noises from the outside. But when you're in an arena and there's no fans, and you just hear like balls dribbling and shoes moving and go, and you just hear them kind of talking, and you're just like, ugh, this is the worst. And we felt it, and I actually hated going to work because I was like, let me just go to the basketball game, set up my tripod in the stands by myself. Like, the hype about my job and the perks of my job is being on the sideline.
Yeah.
And I also thrive off of the fans.
Yeah.
Like, when people are screaming and we're running a live shot and people are trying to jump behind me, and as long as they don't take my microphone and say something really bad, I thrive of like, people are around me, people are watching me.
Right.
It's time to deliver.
Yeah.
And we lost that. And I just think that says a lot about what sports is.
For sure. What insight did you get from the athletes themselves during that time about where they're at mentally, how performance? Do you get any insights on that?
Yeah, you know what? I think it opened up a lot of their eyes to it's on us to be great now, because we can't get together as a team as often because of all these rules. We can't be with our coaches as often. We have to do it all virtual. So it's up to us to get out there and do the work. And they were doing the work, and some weren't. And you saw it.
Yeah.
You saw who put in the work during the time off and who didn't. And I think they all learned that. And it's even just a good lesson for life, is all these athletes get pushed and pushed and pushed throughout their college career. And then if you don't make it to the pros, all of a sudden your sport is over. And then you no longer are getting pushed to work out every day, and you're no longer getting pushed to eat healthy every day because it's not a part of your job anymore.
Right.
And I think, if anything, it taught them that it's on us to like have our stuff together.
Yeah. And I'm sure at a certain level, there's certain athletes that absolutely need those fans either cheering them on or talking trash to them so that it can motivate them. So I'm sure there was a lot of shift in how they were motivated, how they had to go about the game, what they looked at in the game because of all those changes. Totally.
And that's the other thing is like throughout the seasons last year, some of the stadiums and arenas did allow like partial fans, like they allowed like family to return.
Yeah.
But it was still like, 1,000.
Right.
In an arena of like, 25,000 or whatever.
Right.
And the players' first thing is, guys, we're so excited to have fans back this week. Like, I don't care if you're in there, be hollering. Like, we're happy to have you back.
Right.
Like, it was a total turn of energy.
Yeah.
When these guys realized that they were getting even just 1,000 fans back.
Yeah. And I suppose for these sort of reasons is why like guys like Michael Jordan were the greatest, is because he needed very little to motivate him to win that game. He could have made up something about that guy over there that said something. Doesn't have to be the fans, doesn't have to be the fan noise. He just like says, this is what I need today to go out and win, sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. And those are the type of players that it's just like, I mean, obviously he's, who he is, but when you like Donovan Mitchell is a perfect example, like those kind of players change teams, change cities. People rally behind you.
Right.
And if you can have that work ethic behind the scenes, it's a game changer. And I think it even goes back to my work ethic too, is behind the scenes, I'm taking phone calls and trying to see what's next. The job never really has a day off.
Yeah.
Just like the sport, it never really has a day off, and you have to be willing to embrace and like live it.
One of the other shifts I've noticed with professional sports lately is this bigger shift to so much responsibility placed on the athletes outside of just performing on the night of the game. So you brought up Donovan Mitchell. He's now more or less required to speak in behalf of the city and the team on like how we should operate as a state and a city, which I think is great because he obviously has a voice and he's using the voice. But at the same time, like, poor guy, this kind of sucks. He's like, 23, 24, and he's been asked to do this. I imagine myself at 23 and 24, I would have never been able to come up with the words to comment on half this stuff.
I know, it's insane, but here's the thing is they have resources that we do not. Mm-hmm. They get media training, they get there is so much, like they are fed before they even, like they don't have to worry about what they're going to cook themselves that day. It is all set up for them. Their job is to just win games.
Right.
And this even goes to the University of Utah. Like I go over there for football practice and they've got muscle milk set out and I'm always like, can I have one? And they're like, these players are set up for success. And if all you know, you need to just educate yourself. And I know Donovan's really smart. Like he has his own,
smart guy.
like beyond having the resources, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I just think you can either embrace that, which he is, or you can kind of turn away from it, and that's fine too. Like there's other players who are like, well, I'll still play for you and I'll still, you know, represent you guys, but I'm not going to like chime in on things. Like I think you can be whatever you want to be, but we also need to remember that these guys from all teams, all schools, everywhere, from even down to the big sky at Weber State, they are being taken care of, tutored, and that's why athletics are such an amazing thing, is because you're set up for success and it's up to you if you're going to execute the success.
It seemed like a very delicate balance to be able to do that, because I'm sure that players obviously have their own opinions about things, but when they're speaking in behalf of the team, or they know that, you know, the community is going to hear what they say, they have to kind of take a little bit of this PR lens and be able to say things that are kosher, you know, people want to hear sort of things. It's got to be a battle for them to be able to like maybe not fully let out their whole opinion all the time and kind of hold back a little bit.
Well, I feel it for myself sometimes too, because I'm I represent, you know, a television station. I can't be just saying how I feel everywhere because then it makes them look bad or whatever. And it's the same thing with them, is they encourage you to be your own person, athletes, but don't speak out too much because it could make us look bad, and then we could and it goes on. So yeah, it's definitely a thing, and that's why I think sometimes you see the cookie cutter answers, is because they are afraid. But I also cherish a player who kind of lets loose and just talks. Yeah. Because sometimes I'm like, look at you, man. Like, we love it.
Yeah. I love it too, and I would love to see more of it. I guess my fear would be that you have situations like Colin Kaepernick, who probably said too much for the NFL's liking, and it affected his career, right?
Totally.
Sad to see. You know, you wish that we could all just hear what an individual or person had to say about their opinion and respect it, and be
without
like,
it affecting career. I mean, Kyrie Irving is a perfect example of that too, and what he's trying to stand his ground. And listen, everybody can make their own decision and feel it their own way, but it's wild that his basketball team's like, oh, well, if you feel this way, then you can't play with us. That really grinds my gears too. It really gets me going. It's like, we've made certain things an alternate reality that doesn't really exist. Like, we're in the NBA. The NBA is a super rich league. The Brooklyn Nets are a super rich team. Like, they have all the resources they need to make sure that Kyrie is healthy with his team, with the fans. Get him checked every day.
It's not that hard.
Something, right? But it's and this is, and I won't get political at all because I stay far away from that. But it's wild that nowadays, if you speak up too much on any standard, guns are coming at you. I mean, fingers are coming at you. Yeah. It's your fault. It's this fault. It's crazy. And I had a tweet go viral of the Rudy Gobert drawing of this little kid that did the drawing of Rudy Gobert, and I tweeted it out and I said, "What do we think of this drawing?" And I didn't think anyone other than like my couple thousands of followers would be like, "Oh, cool, this is funny." It blew up. And I mean like viral enough to where Shithead Steve, who has 8 million followers on Instagram, reposted it, and I was like, what's going on?
I saw that. That's awesome.
Unreal. People from my hometown being like, "Hey, why is your face on my story or on my newsfeed?" And immediately people turned it to, she's a bully. She's trying to get famous by bullying this kid. People called our station and said, "Do you know that you have a sports reporter who works for you guys who bullies little kids?" And it doesn't matter all the good I do with the "how are you" question and the work ethic I put, and people telling me, "We see your work." One thing that people want to turn, one word that you say or one thing that you do, if enough people get behind it, then it'll work against you.
And you said it earlier, it does just become political. And when it becomes political, we don't need any good reasons to argue it, or good reasons to say Andrea's a bad person, or good reasons to say Kyrie's a bad person. It's just political at this point.
100%.
It's so sad to see.
It's a tough line. And again, just blessed I'm in sports. And I know sports and politics are hand in hand kind of right now, a little bit. But overall, we want to see you win the game.
Yeah.
And that's what I just keep falling back on.
Yeah. And I think at some level, I don't want to ramp on politics too much, but I think politics is designed to interweave in everything in society so that they can have influence, because they know they're going to need that influence to make the next election, to make the next law, to do whatever it is. So if the political influence can go in and have Donovan Mitchell talk about something, or go in and have Kyrie say something, they're winning at some level. Somebody's winning, somebody's losing, and that's all that politics is looking at.
What can I get from you that can help me?
Yeah. It's a really sad place to be in a society, and I think that's why part of the reason I think it's so important to talk about these sort of things openly, so that we can all kind of acknowledge them a little bit more and find ways that we can steer around it, or find different ways to do things in the future, because it doesn't have to be this way, right?
It doesn't have to be this way.
It is this way. Probably going to be this way for who knows how long, but if we talk about it, hopefully it will change.
Yeah. Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. As you look back on, I guess, considering your age, we'd say a little bit of an early career, shorter career, are there any big highlights, big things that come to your mind as like, wow, that was super cool, or this was a turning point? Or
So the turning point was I was working for Idaho, and I convinced my boss in Idaho to send me to a Jazz game. I said, let me go down there. It's 2 hours away. I'll let everyone know that I'm with you, local News 8 in Idaho. It'll make us look good, yada, yada, yada. And I just wanted to get to an NBA game, right? And he's like, okay, we can't afford to put you in a hotel. You got to do there and back in the same day. And I said, yeah, I can do that. Because it was, we're talking, so there's markets to television, and market 1 is New York, 2 is LA, 3 is Chicago. I was in market 164.
Wow.
In Idaho, in Pocatello. And Salt Lake City's 31 actually, because it's up and growing, and it's also based off coverage area. And we cover the entire state of Utah. So yeah, 31. And so anyway, I'm working for Market 164. I convinced them to send me to a Jazz game. I go down to this Jazz game, and I'm just so pumped to be at an NBA game. Right. I'm not thinking about anything else other than do a good job, or else he won't let you come back, and just enjoy the fact that you're here. And this was a regular season game during the middle of the season. I think they were playing the Pistons or something, which, non-conference, didn't really, but I was there.
Yeah.
And I'm at this Jazz game doing my thing, and Fox 13 was there, and they came up to me, and they were like, who are you? And I was like, oh, I'm the girl from Idaho, yada, yada. And they're like, yeah, we saw you on the court, because before the game, you're allowed to go down in the court and record stand-ups, which is on-camera stuff. Yeah. And they're like, we saw you doing your stand-ups down there. You really carried yourself well down there. And I was like, oh, thanks. I'm just happy to be here. Cool. Well, let me get you on Twitter. It's nice to meet you. Okay, cool. Well, 2 months later, I got a call from Fox 13, and they said, we want to bring you to Salt Lake City. We met you at the Jazz game that you were at one time representing Idaho. They basically told me that I carried myself well. I looked like I belonged. When I tell you all I was doing was just oh my God, this is so exciting. Oh my God. That was what I was experiencing internally, but I think I just didn't show that externally.
Yeah.
And that got me my job here, was pushing to do something, to go and do it, to be tired while doing it because I couldn't stay in a hotel. Or I guess I could out of my own pocket, but I didn't. And then I was in the right place at the right time, that I met the people for my next opportunity.
Yeah.
And it was all because I pitched the idea to go and do it.
Yeah.
And then while I was there, I performed.
And this goes back to what you were saying earlier about, what advice you're giving to people coming up in a similar career is go to that high school sports team and go do this, or go do the fly fishing story, because you never know who you're going to meet there, who's going to see you and be like, Andrea. And
I was going to this Jazz game strictly to just be at an NBA game. I was like, sweet, NBA, so much fun. And it turned out to be my next job. So
That's incredible.
So that was a turning point. And then I do have to say that maybe one of my moments where it was like, wow, this is cool, was actually the Alamo Bowl before 2020. So it was 2019 New Year's Eve.
Okay.
And it was my first time traveling like on my own for Fox 13.
Yeah.
And they sent me to San Antonio, paid. And my dream has always been to talk about sports and make money doing it. And I do that.
Yeah.
But the travel added to it is like, am I in another city using a company credit card to talk about sports? Like that was, and we were in the Alamo Dome, and it was on New Year's Eve going into 2020. So before the pandemic hit. So I'm just like, 2020 is going to be awesome. I'm in a hotel downtown San Antonio after, the game's over with all the media members essentially celebrating the fact that we, worked our asses off to do what we did. And
right.
And it was just one of those moments where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. I'm doing what I've always thought about it. And when I was an intern in college, I loved doing work so much that I was like, I can't even imagine getting paid for this. And now that I'm getting paid for it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun.
Yeah.
So that was a big, one of my favorite, I'm doing it. This is cool.
Yeah.
Type of moments.
That is incredible. Would you, is that where you see you kind of going in the future, is having a position where you travel more? And
I'd love to. The goal is to get with a team or a league.
Okay.
NFL, NBA, whatever it may be, or just the Jazz, the Suns, the Bulls, whoever it may be, and be their person and travel all around.
Yeah.
Or be a league's person, be the NFL's person and travel to different NFL games, or be college football's person and travel for NCAA games. Like, I want to be in different places making different marks, because if I can grow locally, I would hope that I can also grow nationally.
Yeah. Is that what, like, kind of the equivalent of Kristen Kenny for the Jazz, going and traveling that way?
Yeah. Actually, sidelining, for a team is exactly what that is. And I also just love the idea of even college sports too, because they're not getting paid, and it's really truly the passion for the game.
Yeah.
I do think that obviously there's passion in professional sports too, but there's a lot of money behind it.
Yeah.
And in college, yes, there's this new thing where if you're, marketable, we can pay you, but overall, you're still trying to get to the next level in college sports. So I love the fact that in college sports, you're truly talking about the love of the game.
Yeah.
And I went to the Little League World Series in 2015. I worked for ESPN. I was 21 years old at the Little League World Series. I was the youngest on staff. And I remember being there, and I was like, I do not belong here. What's going on? But one of the coolest things was that these are kids who love baseball. And that's all it was.
Right.
Was we love baseball, and we want to play baseball. And that was the coolest part, is there's nothing else driving these kids other than the fact that they love baseball. And so the Little League World Series was a big eye-opener for me, too, where I was almost like, maybe I should work with other sports where, like, money isn't always the factor. And I know there's money behind it all, but for that player-wise,
right,
the mindset.
Yeah. As you think about, like, Salt Lake, and you talked about its future a little bit earlier, as you think about Salt Lake growing into a bigger market, what do you think it's going to do for the sports, Jazz, these college teams? What do you think is going to happen that way?
Yeah, I think it's up and coming. I mean, here's the thing. Utah joined the Pac-12, I think it was 9 or 10 years ago. And they've made waves nationally on the AP poll. And then you got BYU who's about to join the Big 12 coming up in a couple years.
Yeah, it's a big move.
Big move. And then you have the Utah Jazz, who were the first in the Western Conference last year. Yeah. Thriving.
Right.
Okay. And then there's been talk about bringing an MLB team here and an NHL team here. Several times there's been talk that let's make that AAA B's baseball team an actual Major League Baseball team. And I know the Oakland A's are looking for a new destination, and Salt Lake's been in the conversation. And why is it that Frozen Fury every year between the LA Kings and some team come to Vivint Arena? Is because people like hockey here. It's just, where do we put them? And it would need to balance with NBA, and they need to play on opposite days and yada yada, but it's doable. I mean, how many cities have 4 major sports teams? So I think that as Salt Lake City grows, I think that we're going to see more and more sports come here, and more people want to come play for the colleges here and stuff like that because they're already making waves. Imagine if we get another pro team here.
Yeah.
Like it's bound to be successful. And I remember back when I think it was before the Utah Jazz were the Utah Jazz, they were in New Orleans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when they came to Utah, everyone's like, well, why are they doing that? You know?
Right.
And it is so crazy how much they've become the Utah Jazz, you know? So it's bound to happen. And I think as the city grows, it'll happen.
As a huge soccer fan, I mean, I'll personally admit I don't give a shit about Real Salt Lake, but it seems like most people in Utah don't either. Why? Do you any sense why? Like, what's your perspective on it?
I don't want to break down Real Salt Lake because they're going through a lot right now.
Yeah.
They don't have a team owner.
Yeah.
They don't have an owner in general.
Right.
People are in and out of staff positions. Money's not there. The head coach just left, and they have an interim head coach, and they have an interim team president, and all this interim going on at Real Salt Lake. And I think that unless you're a diehard like soccer fan, like for the sport itself, I think it's hard for people to get behind them sometimes because there's just they just don't really have it together. But there's such thing as rebuilding, and I think that's what they're in the process of doing. But I also think that soccer is a niche in the United States versus it's number one everywhere else in the world.
Right.
Here it's number 3.
Yeah.
I for sure think it's football, basketball, maybe even baseball.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I would agree.
then soccer. Like,
yeah.
So that's one is RSL's a work in progress, especially right now with no owner and no solid head coach. And then secondly, soccer is just not number one. For the general people.
Right.
But you want to talk to the 10,000 fans that are every single game, like they'll tell you it's their everything. And that's why it works.
Right.
And like I said, this goes back to finding, sports that certain fan bases are passionate about.
Yeah.
You're going to find it everywhere, but that just doesn't necessarily mean it's going to match up with the general fan base public.
You mentioned the international aspect of soccer, and it's the NBA's becoming or is very international right now as well. I mean, the Jazz is a perfect example with players from all different parts of the world. So as a reporter and journalist, do you have a lot of contact with these, France for Rudy Gobert contacting Utah and wanting to get in on the scene here or anything like that? No,
internationally, man, I am so stuck. I'm not stuck, but I am in local like form, and these guys, we cover them when they go and play for the Olympic teams, and we can join them on Zoom and talk to them when they're playing for the Olympic teams. Sometimes there's people from France on our Zoom calls that say, can we ask Rudy a question in French? And they'll do that and stuff, but I haven't had a chance to be a part of it, but I would love to one day be at the Olympics.
Yeah, that seems...
I mean...
I love the Olympics.
Like, wow. Put me in Japan,
Yeah, for sure. You kind of started with some advice of like people coming up in the career of journalism, or especially maybe young women. Are there any other thoughts that you would give about like how to go about it? How to make a name for yourself, how to become the next Andrea Urban?
Oh God, yeah. Wow, that's funny to hear. I think it's just embrace who you are and don't. And I hate the thing, but it's like seriously be yourself, because I used to watch Samantha Ponder and Erin Andrews and all these sideline women and Krista Thompson, and I would be like, well, they do it this way, so I should do it that way. And it's like, by doing you. People are going to notice that you're being yourself and you're not acting and you're not. So by doing you, being you, you're bound to get support. And here's the thing, everyone wants followers nowadays. I don't want your follow if you don't actually like me. And I know that there's going to be those followers who follow you just to keep an eye on you. But overall, like when I start to lose followers or whatever, people say they don't like me, that's fine, because I only want people listening to me and supporting me and watching me if they believe in me.
Yeah.
And so I think it comes from never giving up on who you are, even on the days where you don't think you're enough. And I have days like that too, where I'm like, damn it, I'm not doing enough, or I'm not being enough. And still stems back to when people meet me, they go, wow, you're just like you are on TV. You're the same person. And I'm like, yeah, because I wouldn't ever be anyone else but myself. So embrace who you are, take every opportunity. You're never too good for it. Work hard. And something is bound to work out for you if you just stick to who you are and do the work.
So I hate to admit this about myself, but I think it wasn't until my later 20s, early 30s that I got more and more comfortable just being myself and
totally
learning about who myself was, right?
Totally.
So it took me a long time, and I really wish that I had that wherewithal in my early 20s to be able to do that and be comfortable with it. Do you have any life hacks that you could share with all of us about just diving in and being yourself?
Yeah, I think it stems from making yourself uncomfortable. So in high school, I was super bullied, like Mean Girls movie type of bullied,
Wow.
Unbelievable, to where I was crushed. And I knew that I liked myself, but I knew that I needed to somehow survive what was going on at school and what I was dealing with. And it was tough because I was like, I'm really cool. I know I'm cool. I know I'm nice. And why are they doing this to me? And there wasn't a way for me to stop it. And I wasn't tough enough at the time to be like, hey, screw you. What are you doing? I just took it and was like, well, maybe I am what they're saying I am. And I decided to go to college out of state, Michigan State, because it was the restart button. It was the reset button of going to another state, going to another school where all they knew about me was I was the girl from Illinois. And I was allowed to write my own story. And girls in high school weren't writing my story anymore. So I went to college and I was invited to every party. I was invited to every study group. I was invited to every club, because it didn't matter who you were or what rumors were said about you, because I went to Michigan State and it's 47,000 undergraduate. And to have such a big school with such big opportunity, I was able to find myself. And once I realized that I'm making friends and getting invites to things, and I joined fashion club at first because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that. I joined sports. There's a Quidditch club. There's so many things. And in college, for me, I realized it didn't matter who you were or what you wore or whatever. I could just be myself and I could actually make some waves. So for me, I think it was going to college and being put somewhere that nobody knew who I was, and it was rewriting my story.
Being uncomfortable was a big theme that I just heard. And then the other theme was sometimes we literally need to change physical locations for us to physically have a new space or psychologically have a new space to explore. And, I work with people in lots of different walks of life, and some struggling with mental health. And that's one thing that I often tell people is well, it sounds like you probably need to be physically in a separate space. And that can be as simple as well, I don't really leave my house because I don't feel comfortable and I'm depressed. Well, it sounds like you probably need to leave your house. And how can we talk about doing that? And I like that in the simple sort of level, but then this higher career level, it's the same sort of thing, right? You got to leave what feels comfortable and go on and do something that's uncomfortable to really find yourself.
Yes, hit the reset button and be willing to embrace that, because it's your story to write. Life is just one big novel, and each chapter gets to change, and people are afraid of different chapters. I look back and I'm like, man, I wish I was still doing all the things I used to be doing at Michigan State, because it was awesome. But it's well, now it's awesome too. It's just different.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to adjust the chapter and rewrite the page. And I just think it comes from being willing to, again, be uncomfortable.
Yeah, and usually what you were uncomfortable or nervous or scared about after you get done with that new experience, usually you look back and be like, why was I scared of that? Why do they need to be nervous?
Look at me now. Yeah.
I mean, it's of course healthy to be a little nervous, because that discomfort makes you maybe prepare a little bit more. But after you go through it, you just come back and realize that wasn't worth it. I need to take some more risks. I need to take some more chances, because I really feel that growth. I appreciate that. I really like that insight. I feel like we're also in a space where mental health is such a big and important topic in general, to talk about it more openly, to be able to share how I feel, to be able to share how you feel, and all of this. Have you seen a change, maybe more specifically in the world of sports, about athletes being able to talk about that, about you being able to bring it up, or you being able to talk about it yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the death of Aaron Lowe at the University of Utah, they have hired outside therapists to come in, and these players are telling us, like, man, some of us grew up around this kind of stuff and some of us did not. And the ones that did not, we are using that help. And they say these things. And I actually, like I said, I try not to ask the generic questions. I asked Kyle Whittingham, I was like, hey, I know you guys are doing really well right now. You're 2-0 in conference play, but how's everybody holding up? Like, how's the morale?
Yeah.
Oh, he goes, yeah, this is what's happening, and here's the guys, and they're taking breaks. And a lot of guys tell me meditation too.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys also tell me just manifesting meditation and like silence in the mornings. But yeah, even the jazz players will talk about how they will turn off their phones and just be with their families, and then set a timer on like their microwave for when they need to like turn back on their phone because they probably need to be somewhere. But give yourself that space.
Oh, yeah. Meditation's having a moment too. It seems like it's becoming more accepted, mainstream. People are asking about, what is meditation? How do I meditate? I think it's really good. You know, it's just a really simple form to be able to bring you back in your moment, spend time with your family, process the passing of a loved one, of a teammate,
New things,
process screwing up at the last play of that game, whatever, all those sort of things.
Different way to look at it. A moment with yourself. We're always go, 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 go. At what point do we have a moment with ourselves? Yeah.
It feels like that's very different from the John Stockton, Karl Malone, Michael Jordan days, where it was just like dog eat dog. We're not really talking about emotion here.
No
We're just
way.
talking about like, I can play on my sprained ankle. I can do this.
Yep.
I'm going to dunk on this guy, whatever.
Nails.
Is that like in a sports sense? What are your thoughts about that shift and change?
I personally like the shift because I like the humans behind the game.
Yeah.
So when you tell me that you're struggling with something, or your mom, passed away or whatever, I'm like, wow, like this is so cool now, because now I know why he's the player that he is. So I like it. But it's obvious that the older generation is like, well, now these guys are a bunch of losers and they're a bunch of, and
soft.
Yeah. And it's all going to change in time, and everybody's going to evolve. And I don't hate it. The games are just as fun. You still got the guys you still got the Draymond Greens who are going to kick you,
It's true.
where you shouldn't be kicked, and like things like that. Like there's still that there.
How dare you bring that up against another Michigan? He's a Michigan State guy too, right?
Yeah, he is. I think he kicked when he was on the Warriors though. Yeah. And so I'm just saying is like there's still Bill Lambiers out there, just not the same output as that anymore. Like Draymond literally could do that during a game, and now he would be like, well, I just had a rough week. And I kind of love it. I kind of love it. I'm like, okay, he's a person. So
yeah. If people wanted to follow Andrea, see what you're doing, besides watching you on Fox 13, what other ways?
Yeah, so I'm on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. I'm on KBAR 101 with Mick and Alan in the morning from 7:30 to 9:30 a.m. So if you're ever in the car going to work, I am on the radio, and I always do the joke of the day. I'm the mediocre joker. It's a whole thing. It's so much fun, and it's different than TV because you're allowed to show your personality. And so I'm on the radio Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Also Fox 13 when I am on Fox 13 with games and stuff. And then if you just want to find me on social, on Twitter, I'm Andrea Urban TV. And then on Instagram, I'm Andrea Urban _ because Andrea Urban is taken by an account that has never been used. So
if you own that account, give it up. Give it up.
You know how many times I've DM'd them and be like, can I switch with you, please? They don't even have a profile picture. They don't have any followers. They have like 2 posts. And I'm just like, ugh, and I report them to Instagram. I don't know. It doesn't help.
Right.
I mean, it's not like they're doing anything wrong. They're just using Andrea Urban. It's not actually being used. So
I'm waiting for you to get rich and then finally offer that money to pay for that.
I mean, it might be worth it, right? So, but if you can get verified though, I wouldn't change it, because like I'm verified on Twitter, but not on Instagram. So I'll always be Andrea Urban on TV on Twitter, because if I ever change it, I'll lose the check mark.
which is another weird and strange thing about social media these days.
In today's world.
What you got to think about, and like, I can't change this, I can't do this. People will not know who I am anymore.
Certified.
Certified. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you had any parting wisdom or thoughts about it's funny that when you were talking about Salt Lake City, you said Small Lake City. So that's what I've called this podcast, a Small Lake City podcast.
Because
you're promoting and not even knowing it. Because, you get to these moments where you talk to somebody and then, oh, I know that person, I know this person. Like, oh, Small Lake City,
Yeah.
So I'm all about like promoting community conversation, promoting community dialogue, just to get to know one another, just to have tough conversations about things. Any thoughts about like community, Salt Lake, anything in general?
I just think that for people, the grass is always greener on the other side. So people who live in Salt Lake are like, well, I want to move to New York or I want to move to Chicago. And I think we all need to just embrace where we are because we have basically Jurassic Park in our backyard. I mean, it's unreal. If you're from here, maybe you're used to it, but I'm not from here. And some days I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
These mountains are insane. And you go for a drive and you're like, what the heck? Like, so I just like to remind myself, like, embrace where you are. And when you do that, like, everything becomes more beautiful. Like you watch people on TikTok who are like a day in the life, and it's like coffee shop, walking down the street in New York or whatever. And if you start glamorizing your life in your head, everything is just going to get better. So this doesn't just go for Salt Lake community, but I do think that that's the same thing here. Is there's little things where it's like, oh, Salt Lake's downtown life could use some work, or Salt Lake's this could use some work, but also embrace it while it's this way, because it's not going to be this way for long.
I love that. And I'm trying to do that myself, being born and raised here. I mean, I didn't grow up in Salt Lake, but I grew up just south of Salt Lake, and seeing everything changing, there's like this pull of like, like you said earlier, I don't know if I want it to change, but I'm just trying to embrace it and love all the things that are going to come with it.
Totally.
Yeah.
You get it.
Thank you so much for coming again. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I appreciate all your time. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you for having me, and maybe we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Let's catch up in a little while, see how the Jazz are doing mid-season or whatever.
Okay. Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, thank you.